Let's jump right into this explainer where we're tackling one of the most chilling century-old mysteries out there, the Hinterkaifeck murders. We're going to walk through the forensic evidence, the really unsettling architectural layouts, and a timeline that's just purely terrifying. Our goal? To try and piece together what actually happened at that isolated Bavarian farmstead back in 1922.
Okay, put yourself in this horrific reality for a second. What happens when a killer completely massacres a family and then just refuses to leave the crime scene? Seriously, no running away. We're looking at a deeply disturbing true story here, where the perpetrator actually stayed on the property for days. They kept the fires burning, they ate the food, and they even fed the livestock, all while living right alongside the bodies of their victims. It's incredibly unsettling to even think about.
Section 1. The Hinterkaifeck Mystery.
To even begin to wrap our heads around how a crime this bizarre could happen, we've got to anchor ourselves in the terrifying physical space of the farm itself. So, taking a cue from an art professor's scale model in our source material, we're going to use forensic aesthetics. Basically, that means looking at how visual and physical spaces intersect with criminal justice. By mapping this out, we start to really see how the buildings literally played a part in the terror.
And the architecture here, it's a huge piece of the puzzle. This wasn't just a house with a barn sitting across the yard. The buildings were all physically connected. But the absolute most horrifying detail is the attic. It was completely unobstructed. It stretched across the entire structure, house and barn, without a single interior wall, meaning someone could just walk freely right above the living quarters and the animal stalls without hitting a single barrier, completely unseen by the family going about their day downstairs.
Section 2. A farm of secrets.
Now, before we get to the actual timeline of the murders, we really need to look at who was living there. Because, well, this wasn't exactly your typical idyllic rural family. You had Andres Gruber, the grandfather, and his wife Cecilia. Living with them was their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabriel, her 7-year-old daughter Silly, and her toddler son Josef. Oh, and rounding out the household was Maria Baumgartner, the maid. Tragically, the day of the murders was actually Maria's very first day on the job.
The farm itself was entirely shrouded in some incredibly dark secrets. We have to look at this impartially, but the sources are clear. Andreas had a known history of severe domestic abuse, and he even served a year in prison for an incestuous relationship with his daughter, Victoria. Because of that nightmare, the paternity of the toddler Josef was highly disputed. Just to add another layer of tension, a neighbor named Lorenz Schlittenbauer was also romantically involved with Victoria. In fact, he claimed Josef as his own child during court proceedings. It was a very, very volatile mix.
Section 3. The Chilling Timeline.
Let's look at how that tension turned into absolute dread in the weeks leading up to the massacre. Early in March 1922, a Munich newspaper that nobody on the farm even subscribed to just randomly appeared. Then, on March 30th, there was an attempted break-in at the machine shed and a massive family blowout. March 31st rolls around, the new maid arrives, and this is almost certainly the night the murders happened. From April 1st to the 3rd, neighbors start noticing eerie sightings, the mail is piling up, and the family is completely missing from church, which leads us to April 4th when the bodies were finally discovered.
The red flags leading up to that night were everywhere. We're talking a massive sum of 700 gold marks mysteriously left in the church confessional by Victoria. Andreas's house keys went missing. But the most terrifying thing? Andreas actually found 2 pairs of footprints in the snow leading from the edge of the woods right up to his barn, with absolutely 0 footprints leading away. And then came the noises. He heard unexplained footsteps pacing at night up in that open, barrier-free attic we just talked about. And yet, despite all of this screaming that something was wrong, he turned down a neighbor's offer to borrow a gun.
To give you a sense of just how explosive things were right before the murders, listen to this heartbreaking quote from 7-year-old Silly, told to her classmates. She said, "Grandfather hit my mother, and she left. At first, we couldn't find her and believed she was already dead. When day came, we found her sitting on a log in the woods." That intense domestic fight happened on March 30th, setting a deeply, deeply ominous stage for what came next.
And the creepiness doesn't stop when the family dies. We have this chilling account from April 1st. Even after the Grubers were likely dead, a passing carpenter named Michael Plockel noticed smoke billowing from the property's bakehouse. He described it as having this disgusting smell, like old rags were being burned. He even saw a large unknown man holding a pocket lantern who immediately hid his face. So this basically proves the killer was actively living at the crime scene, keeping the farm running while 6 bodies lay just yards away. It's unthinkable.
Section 4. The Gruesome Discovery. By April 4th, the sheer silence at the farm finally pushed the neighbors to do something. The whole community was forced to ask, where were they? The Grubers were devout. They never missed church, but their pews were empty on Sunday. The postman noticed the mail practically overflowing in the window. Little Silly had missed days of school. This mounting, suffocating silence is what finally led neighbor Lorenz Schlittenbauer to pull together a search party.
The search party systematically moved through those connected buildings we looked at earlier. First, Lorenz Schlittenbauer and two other neighbors forced their way into the barn, and right there, they uncovered just a horrific sight. 4 bodies, Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and young Seely, stacked methodically and hidden under the hay. From that grim discovery, they pushed their way right into the adjoining farmhouse, where they found the toddler Josef and the maid Maria murdered in their own rooms.
So the devastating bottom line here is that all 6 people on the property were mercilessly killed. The perpetrator used severe blows to the head from a heavy farm implement, systematically and brutally wiping out every single person at Hinterkaifeck.
Section 5. Leaning Theories and Suspects. Naturally, for over a century, amateur sleuths and historians have gone back and forth on who committed the crime. The true crime community is generally split into 2 main camps, and we're going to look at both impartially. Theory A suggests that Andreas Gruber simply snapped, that the abusive father murdered his own family before being killed himself by a vengeful neighbor. Theory B, on the other hand, posits that the neighbor Lorenz Schlittenbauer acted entirely alone as a sole annihilator, basically wiping them out to secure the farm and clear the heirs.
Putting these arguments side by side, there are definitely compelling points in both directions. For Theory A, pointing at Andreas, we have his documented history of extreme violence and incest. Plus, a makeshift haybed and actual human waste were found up in the attic, suggesting he might have hidden up there in a panic. Also, his wife Cecilia was killed with extreme cruelty, which often implies deep personal rage. Now on the flip side, for Theory B, Lorenz had a massive motive to claim the farm and the land. Suspiciously, he sent his kids to check on the farm first, and then, when he was with the other adults, he tightly controlled the discovery of the bodies. Proponents of this theory point out that methodically stacking the bodies in the barn looks a lot like someone trying to clear out all the heirs and witnesses in one fell swoop.
Section 6. A Century of Mystery.
Now, with these incredibly detailed theories and over 100 years of intense analysis, why does this case remain officially unsolved today? Well, the main reason is just a profound loss of physical truth over time. The initial investigation eventually stalled out, and then the outbreak of World War II completely threw a wrench into any ongoing efforts. Most tragically for modern forensics, the key physical evidence, which actually included the victims' skulls that had been sent off to Munich for analysis, was destroyed in Allied bombings. The evidence was literally wiped off the map, freezing this case in time forever.
Which leaves us sitting with this final question. A century later, with the farm long demolished and the core evidence literally blown to dust, will the restless ghosts of Hinterkaifeck ever truly find peace? It's a haunting final thought, really, about how the truth can just be swallowed whole by history. We may truly never know who really walked away from those footprints in the snow.